Hello, I'm James Marks. I'm with the KVCC culinary program, and today we'll be making beet sourdough bread. All right, so the things you're gonna need are beet puree. I've already put one beet into a blender with 360 milliliters of water, and then pureed that, and then poured it into this container. You'll also need 500 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of salt, 4 grams of rosemary, and 2 500 milligram tablets of vitamin C. First, you're going to take the beet juice, pour it into your bowl. Take 2 spoons and crush the tablets of vitamin C between the 2 spoons. You want to make sure it's as fine as you can possibly get it. That way you don't have chunks of the tablets inside of your bread. What the vitamin C is going to do is it's going to keep that red color of the beets throughout the process, so that instead of having a brown beet sourdough, you're going to have a vibrant red. You're also going to need 100 grams of sourdough starter. The starter is going to act as the leaven for the bread so that it actually rises for us. Unlike using yeast in yeast breads, this is using wild yeast that we capture from the air and from the wheat that we feed our sourdough with. Once you put the starter into the beet puree and beet juice, you're going to mix it in by hand. That way it disperses all of the starter throughout the liquid. After you've had that starter dispersed, you're going to take your flour and pour it in. The thing you're looking for when you're doing your initial mix of the dough is for it to be fully incorporated and more of a raggedy dough. It doesn't need to be nice and smooth during this step. Oftentimes I like to use a spoon in order to do this so that I can keep my hands clean, but I've got these nice gloves today, so I just do it by hand today. Once you've gotten the sourdough dough so that there's no dry pieces that are in the bottom hanging out, or dry flour just chilling out, and you've fully incorporated that flour, then you're going to cover it with some plastic wrap. And then you're going to let it sit for 45 minutes. And this is called the autolyse. And the reason for that is it helps to start the process of the yeast eating the flour, the sugars in the flour, and start rising and everything. And now we're just going to let that set for 45 minutes until it's done. Now it's done. So now you're going to take your salt and rosemary And you're going to pour that over your dough. And get your hand wet, and you're going to mix that into the dough. It's going to feel like it's starting to come apart at first, and that's fine. Just keep working it, and eventually it's going to start coming back. A couple of things you really want to make sure you're looking for here while you're doing it is you want to make sure that all the salt has melted in. So as your hand starts drying out and the sourdough starts sticking to your hand, just keep getting it a little wet, and it'll help to disperse that salt and make sure it dissolves into the dough. And as you can see, it doesn't want to really stay together right now, but that's fine. You just keep working it, and eventually it'll stay together. Now I'm starting to not feel any of the salt left in the dough. It's starting to actually stay stuck to itself again. So typically I'll just make a little ball of it in the middle of the bowl and then let it set like that for another 30 minutes until we do the first stretch and fold. Now, when you're doing your stretch and folds, dough's gonna wanna stick to your hands again. So just wet your hand, give it a little shake if you need to, fold it over. You're just gonna keep repeating that 4 times, turning it the bowl a quarter of a turn each time. Sometimes you need to give it a little bit extra love and force the stretch, but not too much, because you don't want to rip the dough. And you're going to do the quarter turn 4 times. All right. Now that's done. Once again, I like to kind of keep my dough kind of neat in there. So I'll form it into a little ball once again. That way I can see the spread a lot better between each stretch and fold and what's going on. After you're done with that, you'd cover it again with plastic wrap. That way it retains its moisture. If you're using a metal bowl like I am today, it helps sometimes to wet the edge of the bowl in order to keep the plastic wrap down. After you've done 4 stretch and folds, 30 minutes apart for each one, you're going to let your dough bulk ferment for at least 2 hours, but at up to 12 hours throughout the day. What you're looking for is its volume to have at least increased by twice of what it originally was. For this, you're going to want to have dry hands. You're going to use some dusting flour in order to sprinkle that over the top. That way, when you turn out the dough, it won't stick to your working surface. You don't want to put a lot over the working surface because then it becomes hard to work and makes it so that you're unable to get a good seal on the bottom of the bread, of the dough. Now here you have a couple options. You're going to shape it regardless of what you do. However, you can cold shape it and then cold ferment it, or you can just shape and go straight into a bake. I'm going to show you both today. So you're going to cut it in half. And you'll notice that some of the dough in here is a little bit more brown than the magenta. That's because this particular dough did not get the vitamin C, and it ended up oxidizing, turning the brilliant red into a brown. You're going to take it and you're going to pinch the corners together and fold it over. And then you're going to slide it towards you on an unfloured area of the surface to create a nice tight little ball. And you're going to do that regardless if you're planning on cold fermenting or if you're just going to straight go to the bake. Keeping your hands floured will help with preventing the dough from sticking to your hands and making it easier to actually work with as well. There. Now we've got 2 balls of dough. If you're going to cold ferment, you're going to get a bâtonnet. It's for forming the dough so that it forms the shape that you actually want it to. Use some rice flour, sprinkle that on the bottom in the bâtonnet. And you want to be pretty liberal with the flour. That way, none of the dough sticks to the bâtonnet. Then you're just going to place it in there. Sprinkle some more rice flour over the top. You're going to cover it with a towel. And as the name cold ferment implies, you're going to put this into a refrigerator for between 12 to 48 hours. What that's going to do is that's going to help develop the sour flavor that sourdough is known for. If you're not going to be cold fermenting, you're just going to go straight to baking. What you want to do is you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to preheat your Dutch oven inside of the oven as well. Once it reaches temperature, you're going to take out the Dutch oven. Remember that it is hot. You're going to take a lime and you're going to score the bread. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to control how your bread rises in the oven. I like to keep it simple. Just do a quick cross over the top. And then place that on top of the Dutch oven, or into the Dutch oven. Cover it, and then put it into the oven for 40 minutes covered. After you've had it in the oven for 40 minutes, you're going to take it out, uncover it, and put it back in the oven for another 5 minutes. And then you have your bread.